Alex Eala sold out a WTA 1000 stadium in 30 minutes, and the man who runs one of the biggest tournaments in this sport went on television and admitted on the record that he has no idea what he is looking at anymore. But the 30-minute sellout is not even the part that should stop you, because that one did not happen in Cincinnati. That happened in Toronto weeks earlier, and what Cincinnati did was somehow stranger. They put a top 20 seed on a court you do not need a ticket for, and it still was not enough. So before we get to the moment a tournament with a $260 million facelift had to physically relocate a 21-year-old onto its biggest stage, answer one question for me in the comments, because I want to see if anyone can do it. Name one other player on tour right now who does this. Not a legend at the end of a farewell run, not a top 5 seed, a player ranked 20th in the world. Start in Toronto, because Toronto is where the receipts start. The National Bank Open put Alexandra Eala's name on the schedule, and according to tournament director Karl Hale, the seats for that match were gone inside 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Hale has run that event for years. He has sold tickets to Serena Williams matches, to Grand Slam champions, to every category of star the sport produces. And his read on what happened was that Eala's fans had been sitting there waiting to find out when she played before they bought anything at all. That is a very specific kind of demand. That is not people buying a night of tennis. That is people buying her. And the tournament's original plan, the plan a professional scheduling department made using rankings and seedings and every metric this sport normally trusts, was to put her on the grandstand, a court that holds 2,800 people. Hale's own estimate was that she had probably already sold upward of 5,000 tickets by herself. Read that again, because the number matters. A court that holds 2,800. A player who had already moved something like 5,000. That is not a scheduling error. That is a category error, and it is the exact same category error Cincinnati was about to make on a bigger stage. And the relocation was not the only accommodation Toronto made. They added Filipino dishes to the food menu. They put her first round doubles match, a doubles match, on center court. Hale's own description of all of it was that they had never done anything like this before in the history of the tournament, and he called her an absolute blessing to the sport and to his event. Tournament directors do not talk that way about a player they simply happen to like. They talk that way about a player who has changed their revenue. But here's the part that makes it so much worse. Toronto at least fixed it before the gates opened. Cincinnati fixed it after. On August 15th, Alex Eala walked out for her opening match at the Cincinnati Open as the 17th seed, the highest seeding of her career at this level, coming off the first WTA Tour title ever won by a Filipino player. And the tournament had her on court 3. Court 3 is a grounds ticket court. Bob Moran, the tournament director, said so himself, and he said it without any embarrassment, because on paper, it is a perfectly reasonable decision. Grounds ticket means no assigned seat. It means whoever walks in first gets the best view, and whoever walks in late stands at the back or does not get in at all. And her fans understood exactly what that meant. So picture this, because this image is the entire video. A line of Filipino fans standing outside a locked front gate at 8 o'clock in the dark at a tennis tournament in Mason, Ohio. Not inside, not at the court, outside the perimeter, at the gate, waiting for a building to open. Moran said the gates did not open until 9:30. That is an hour and a half. An hour and a half of standing outside a fence for a match with no reserved seating for a player who at that point had never won a main draw match at this tournament in her life. Think about that for a second, because most sports fans have never done that for anything. And the wait is not even the part that broke the tournament director's brain. What broke it is what happened when the locks came off. Moran described the moment the gates opened as a stream of fans heading straight for court 3 to grab the best seats they could get. And that word is doing a lot of work. Not a trickle, not a healthy walk-up, a stream, moving with a destination, 90 minutes of accumulated patience released at once, all of it aimed at one court out of the 31 on that site. And this is a site built specifically to absorb crowds. That is not editorializing. That is what the money was for. The Lindner Family Tennis Center went through a $260 million renovation that doubled the acreage of the place, with state and local taxpayers contributing roughly $135 million of it, including the city of Mason spending $15 million just to buy the site. In 2025, the tournament drew a record 285,571 fans from all 50 states and 65 countries, and the players voted it Tournament of the Year at the 1,000 level on both tours. This is not a struggling event that needed a savior. This is arguably the best-run non-slam tournament in tennis, and Moran said Saturday and Sunday were record-breaking days for fan attendance. Records at a place that just set records. Now here is the kicker, and this is the piece people keep skipping. None of that is the story either. The story is what the man in charge said out loud about it on camera, with cameras rolling and a national broadcast panel listening. Because Bob Moran is not a rookie. He runs Cincinnati and he runs Charleston. He is a president inside BMOC Sports and Entertainment. He has spent decades in the tennis business. He has sat through farewell tours and rivalry finals and Grand Slam champions in his building. And when the Tennis Channel panel asked him about the crowd for Alex Eala's first round match, what came out of his mouth was that he had not seen anything like this. He said it, then he said it again for emphasis. He really hadn't. And the host Steve Weissman did what any good interviewer does and pushed on the boundary of the claim, because that is a big statement and it needed a limit. He asked whether Moran meant Cincinnati specifically or the tour as a whole. This is the moment. Moran did not take the exit. He did not narrow it. He widened it. He said no, he hadn't seen this, that it was a phenomenon, and that it was great for women's tennis 100%. That's not a fan account. That's not a viral clip with no context. That is the person who controls the schedule, the courts, the gates, and the ticket inventory at one of the 4 biggest tournaments in the United States, describing a 21-year-old from Quezon City as something outside his professional experience. And remember what he is describing. He is not describing a stadium final. He is describing an hour and a half of people standing outside a gate in the dark for a court with no assigned seats. Now, before we get to the moment Cincinnati blinked and moved her, I have to be fair to the other side of this, because there is a real argument here and it deserves a full hearing rather than a cheap dismissal. The argument goes like this. This is the venue, not the player. Cincinnati was already the hottest ticket in American tennis outside the US Open. More than 27,000 people registered for the pre-sale. Ticket packages sold out in 3 days. The place just set an all-time attendance record. It just won Tournament of the Year from the athletes themselves, and it sits in the middle of the North American hardcourt swing with essentially every star in the sport passing through. A tournament like that sells out with or without any individual name on the entry list. Ticket analysts have made a version of this same argument all summer about this stretch of the calendar, pointing out that prices held firm even when marquee men's players withdrew, because the demand is broad and the draws are deep. That is a genuinely strong case, and if the only evidence were attendance figures, it would probably win. So let's put it to the test with the one number that a strong venue cannot manufacture: price. Compare that to what happened in Toronto on August 8th. Eala played Katie McNally. Regular seating for her match sold out at $60 to $125 a ticket. Other matches on the very same day in the very same building started at $40. Same city, same tournament, same afternoon, same product on paper. Her court costs roughly triple to get into at the low end, and hers is the one that sold out. That is not the building. Buildings do not price by player, markets do, and the market had made its decision. Put it all together and the pattern stops being anecdotal. In Washington, D.C. Open owner Mark Ein said that around 80% of the ticket inquiries in July were about her matches. 80%! At a tournament whose champion that week beat the world number 3 in the final. In Toronto, organizers estimated as many as 8 in 10 people in the building were there for one player. And when the doors finally opened on that relocated match, 10,077 people were inside, in a stadium that had sold out on a weeknight in a way, according to Hale, that only Serena Williams had managed there in the previous 2 decades. In Dubai back in February, Coco Gauff beat her 6-love 6-2, and then stood on court and thanked her opponent in front of everyone for bringing a new demographic to the sport, and said how much it meant to see the stadium full. That was the world number 4, after a straight sets win, choosing to talk about the crowd. And Dubai is worth sitting with for a second, because it explains the mechanism. More than 450,000 Filipinos live in that city, over 20% of its population, and they turned a February quarterfinal into a home match on the other side of the planet. That is the model, repeated city by city. Wherever the diaspora already is, the building fills. Now compare that to what she had actually achieved on a tennis court by the time all of this started, because the gap between the two is the entire point. 2 weeks before Cincinnati, she won the Mubadala DC Open, the first WTA Tour singles title any Filipino player has ever won. And she did not sneak through a soft draw to get it. She went through Qinwen Zheng, Leylah Fernandez, Alina Svitolina, and Naomi Osaka. And then she lost the opening set of the final to the world number 3 Jessica Pegula and won the next two, 4-6, 6-4, 6-love. 7 top 10 wins this season before she ever hit a ball in Ohio. And she arrived there from a country with almost no tennis infrastructure and almost no history of producing professionals. Off courts, she has described as cracked, with holes in the net and no fencing, having picked up a racket at 4 years old. Last month, she played twice on center court at Wimbledon. She has said herself that carrying a nation is heavy in some moments and fun in others, and that she is mostly trying to take it all in. That is the player the seeding sheet listed as 17th, and this is the thing the Tour's own math cannot process. All year, this has followed her. Fans queued for hours in Melbourne when she was ranked 49th and lost her opening match. The roar at Wimbledon when she took out the defending champion in the 3rd round. In Toronto, she posted that it felt like Barangay Toronto, a neighborhood, a block party, in a city with a Filipino community she put at more than 300,000 people. The president's office in Manila issued a statement about a 3rd round tennis match. Novak Djokovic, asked about the crowd she brings, called it a good problem. Naomi Osaka and Coco Gauff both went out of their way in Toronto to say the same thing, that the demographic she is bringing into tennis is good for the sport and that the rest of the tour is benefiting from it. When the players themselves are on record welcoming it, including the ones who have to walk out and compete in front of a crowd that is openly rooting against them, the argument about whether this is real is finished. The only argument left is what the sport intends to do about it. So what happens when a tournament finally admits it got the room size wrong? You get exactly what Cincinnati gave us. She beat Elena Gabriela Ruse on that grounds ticket court, up 6-1, 3-love, when Lightning stopped play around 12 minutes past noon. And Ruse, who had already taken a medical timeout on her right foot, did not come back out. It was Eala's first main draw win in Cincinnati, and it made her, per Opta, the second youngest Asian player ever to record 10 or more hardcourt wins at this level in a single season, behind only Naomi Osaka. And her next match against the world number 10 Amanda Anisimova was not on court 3. It was on the main stadium, in the night session, under the lights at 8:30. That is the payoff. That is the whole story in one scheduling change. The tournament looked at a line of people standing outside a locked gate for an hour and a half, looked at the stream that came through when it opened, looked at its own record-breaking Saturday and Sunday, and it moved her to the biggest court it owns. Toronto had to do the identical thing weeks earlier, off a 2,800-seat court and onto a 10,000-seat one. 2 different tournaments, 2 different countries, 2 different professional operations, both wrong in exactly the same direction, both correcting in exactly the same way. And notice the direction of the correction. Nobody moved her down. Nobody in either building looked at the demand a second time and decided it had been overstated. Both operations made the same discovery in the same order. They underestimated her, the fans proved it physically, and the only available fix was to hand her a bigger room. The seeding did not change. The ranking did not change. Neither tournament has explained which principle it was applying when it moved her, and neither has said what it will do next time. What we know is what it cost this time. Fans who paid for grounds access stood outside a fence for 90 minutes because the tournament's estimate of the room she needed was wrong, and the people who absorbed that cost were the ones who traveled and lined up, not the people who made the call. So here's my question back to you, the same one I asked at the top, and I genuinely want the comments on this one. Should tournaments schedule by ranking or by who actually fills the building? Pick one and tell me what you would say to the other side, because this does not stop here. Cincinnati crowns its champions on August 23rd. The US Open begins in New York on August 30th. She is expected in Singapore for the WTA 500 in late September, and she has said the Asian Games in Japan are in her plans. Every one of those events now has the same decision on its desk that Toronto and Cincinnati both got wrong the first time. Watch which court they put her on. That is the tell. That is where you will find out whether anyone in this sport was actually paying attention, or whether they are going to make a line of people stand outside another locked gate in the dark and find out the hard way all over again.